What's going on, guys? It's Mike for SimRacing604, and welcome to the first in what will hopefully be a long-running series of chats with fellow members of the sim racing community. One of my goals with this channel this year was to start connecting more with not just my viewers, but also interesting and opinionated sim racers. So the plan is to do these chats roughly weekly and just talk about anything or nothing with cool people like today's guest. And that guest is Alan from MoonieGT. Alan has one of the fastest growing sim racing channels right now, and despite the channel being relatively new, he's already amassed a good sized fan base, and thanks to his live streams and recorded content on a variety of sims, he's really settled into a groove. And he's also shaping his channel around helping others, which I think is incredible. So we'll get into that and what cause he's racing for and what we can do as a community to help him out. So links to subscribe to Alan's channel and find out more about his content and the cause he's working so hard to support are in the description, so be sure to head over to his channel and hit the subscribe button. So without further ado, here is my chat with MoonieGT. Alright guys, so here we are joined by Alan from MoonieGT. Alan, how are you, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. I had been wanting to do this show for a while and have just interesting people from the world of sim racing on just to talk about sim racing and how they got into racing and their channel and whatnot. So thanks so much. Appreciate you being here. I got to know you actually through kind of a mutual sim friend of ours, and that's James. And he does these awesome live streams, and I saw you in there as the moderator. And yeah, the stream had probably a dozen or so viewers, so everyone in chat got to really interact a lot. So that's kind of how I got to know you. How long have you had the channel for?
I just started in April, so not very long. It really kind of blossomed from being stuck at home in the pandemic, so it gave me something to do.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of us are trying to find new avenues and new ways to pass time during the pandemic. And before we go any further, of course, a few days ago you posted a really fantastic video that has really blown up in popularity, and I know you're doing some things on the charity front. Can you talk just a little bit about your upcoming live stream and sort of the reasoning behind that?
Yeah. So I guess just to kind of recap a little bit the video, my family's had to deal with pediatric cancer, in that about 3 years ago my son was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And it's still a journey, but it was quite a journey going through it. And we've seen just how neglected pediatric cancer research is and how important it is. The statistic I mentioned in the video, which just kind of blows my mind, is that Starbucks makes more money in 2 days than is spent on pediatric cancer in a whole year. And so really the motivation for me to grow this channel and to do a charity live stream was to try to help combat that. I really want to raise some money so we can get some more research done, because it's just so important. And the techniques that were used to save my son's life didn't exist, a few years before we needed them. And I want to do something about that.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. And please know you have my support. Whatever you need to help promote that live stream, I will absolutely do it. So thank you for sharing your story. And we'll get that. We'll make that as big as possible for you, Alan.
I really appreciate that.
Awesome. So always when I see these interviews, the first question is always, how did you get into sim racing? I'm going to skip that. I want to go back. I want to go back further. What got you into racing? What's your sort of first memory of sort of getting the bug for racing?
I think it was just playing with remote control cars, probably. I can remember being a kid in my hallway. Did you have Tyco race cars, the RC race cars from Tyco? Does that ring a bell with you from your... I don't know if that's just a US thing. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's just, the small little RC cars that use like 4 AA batteries. And they came with like these little orange cone sets. And I remember setting up racetracks in my hallway and just sliding the car around on the wood floors and stuff and just creating my own racetracks. That was probably the start of it for me.
Awesome. And then so that obviously blossomed into sim racing games. What's your sort of earliest racing game memory? What do you remember playing as a kid?
I think the earliest thing that I would call sim racing was, I remember my first wheel was a Thrustmaster T2. I don't know if you remember that wheel, but this is going way back. It was this big, just rubber covered wheel. It had a giant base. And kind of like your AccuForce wheel, had a cord that dangled from the rim to make the buttons work, but it had no force feedback. It was just a spring.
Sure.
And I remember doing lots of like IndyCar stuff. And so eventually that steering wheel just got worn out from turning left, and it was so much easier to turn left than it was right, because it was so cheap. And and stuff. But that's probably the earliest stuff, and that was back in the mid '90s, I think. So quite a while ago. I've been doing this poorly for a long time.
But you also have the real world side. Like I saw one of your videos, I guess it was Circuit of the Americas that you took a
Yeah.
car out to, and you mentioned a bunch of other tracks that you've driven on as well. So was that, did you do real world racing, or do you just take your car out to various sort of famous tracks?
Yeah, it just track days. So it started with I guess within a year after I got married to my wife, my father-in-law and I went out to Laguna Seca to do a one-day class with Skip Barber, which was just a dream come true. I mean, that was the first track I ever drove was Laguna Seca. How
Wow.
special is that, right?
Yeah.
We did half a day in the Skip Barber trainer cars, which was super cool because I got to use the sequential gearbox that I'll probably never get to use again. And then the second half of the day was the MX-5 Cup car. And when I came home from that trip, within about 2 months, I bought my first Miata, which was a 1991 Miata in British Racing Green that had about 181,000 miles on it. There were some holes in some of the panels, and it was a rough car. But I threw in a roll bar, stickier tires, changed brake pads, did fluids, and I was on the racetrack, my local track, and that was just incredible.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So it's sort of a cliched question in sim racing, but how does the real world driving experience on a track like that compare to the sim? Is there one sim in particular you can think of where they just absolutely nailed it and the feel seems good, or is it just totally separate worlds for you?
It really kind of depends on cars and tracks. I think the first sim that I ever drove where I felt like this feels like doing track days was in Assetto Corsa, and I used to lap over and over Magione in like the E30 BMW and some of the old 911s, and just the way that you could feel the weight transfer and the force feedback. I remember being blown away by Assetto Corsa the first time I started doing that. I think iRacing's too punishing. I think that's a pretty popular opinion that once the car starts to go, at least for some of the cars in iRacing, it's just too brutal, and that you can slide cars around and catch them, and it really, I guess, it depends on the cars you're driving too. So my track experience is mostly into slower, in slower cars like Miatas, and
Sure.
those cars are quite happy to roll and slide, and you get so much feeling from them. And maybe real race cars are that punishing. I don't know. Get a GT3 car, and maybe once it starts to go, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like you should be able to catch things a bit more than that.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. So, I mean, you mentioned iRacing there. You mentioned Assetto Corsa. I've seen on your channel you do Assetto Corsa Competizione as well. You do Automobilista 2 as well. So, all these at play, if it's a quiet moment, you're not recording, you're just driving for you, what are you most likely to be driving?
Mm, that's tough. They're all so good. They all excel at different things.
Sure.
I'm really enjoying Assetto Corsa Competizione right now, in that I feel like that force feedback is really engaging, especially with the DD1. It just feels so natural, and it's just a very engaging drive. I really enjoy Race Room too. I was actually just doing some Race Room hot laps because we do a weekly hot lap competition on my Discord, and different people pick different car track sim every week. And this week it's the 92 DTM BMW around the
Nice.
Race Room Raceway, and that's a pretty fun, wild combo.
I'm
So
sure.
I don't think I could pick just one. I mean, I've had so much fun in so many sims that's all I'm after is fun. I don't care about, are these physics exactly as real as possible? That doesn't matter. If I'm having fun, racing friends online, that doesn't get any better than that for me.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And the physics thing is weird too, because and granted, I've been drawn into the debate as well and criticized physics, but especially when you get into the top tier cars or a car that's been out of service for a very long time, it's like, who are we to judge?
Yeah.
Like a F1 car. Should a guy like me sitting in my garage be able to criticize Formula One physics? Probably not. But I think it just has to feel natural and lead to that fun that you were alluding to. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah,
if
exactly.
we took complaining off the internet, what would the internet be?
Yeah, it would be a quiet place. I was
That's right.
noticing that the other day. I was on Twitter and I was thinking, if everyone tweeted as much about what they like as they did about what they didn't like, what would this look like? You couldn't even recognize Twitter, I bet. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's just my old man rant.
Yeah. No, we could use some more positivity in the world for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely, yep. Okay, so you've got all these sims that you play and you've got some cool hardware. What's the sort of direction you're taking your channel? Is there sort of a bigger picture? You mentioned the charity thing. You want to do as much as possible to help out, a charity that's dear to your heart. But in terms of content on your channel, are you going to mostly focus on live streams moving forward? Are you going to do recorded videos, tutorials, or how do you see your channel sort of playing out in the coming weeks, months, years?
I'm going to say yes. Yes to all of that. But yeah, the underlying goal for me absolutely is to grow the channel just to help the charity. That's my main focus, absolutely. And whatever I think I can do that will help serve that purpose, that's what I'm going to do. I've really enjoyed doing the live streams because it's so much fun to interact with people. I think kind of the format of my channel is I like to have some kind of championship series going on against AI, at least right now. First, I did it was a multi-class series in Race Room with DTM, GT3, and GT4 cars, which was a lot of fun because I love DTM cars and I love multi-class racing. So I thought that would be a good time, and I really enjoyed that. And now I'm doing the F1 2020 season, and boy, that's going rough. But and then otherwise, I just try to do videos about whatever kind of interests me at the time. AMS2 updates has been a lot of fun, and do some reviews for things when they pop up. But yeah, I don't think I have a kind of a locked plan. It's just kind of fill it out as we go.
Yeah, cool. And good news on the DTM front. I just read the Discord for Race Room this morning. We're getting the DTM 2020s very soon, which should be awesome. In fact, I think it might be in the next couple of days. They're at least going to start a hot lap competition. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, exactly. All right, final question of this interrogation, and then we'll get into sort of the more interactive stuff. But what's the next piece of hardware or software that you plan to buy?
Well, I've got one box sitting here next to me, which I'm really excited about, and that is a pedal slider. And I'm excited about that because now my kids will be able to get into the rig and drive.
Oh, sweet.
That's the best thing. So I recently got my chair. I don't know if you saw before, but I had a lawn chair strapped to my 80/20 rig because that's what I had. And that's what I've been racing in for the last 10 years probably. And I love my lawn chair, but with the lawn chair on the rig, I couldn't adjust the forward back, and I the kids couldn't reach the pedals and everything. And
right.
So the pedal tray slider will probably go on hopefully today, so I can get my kids in the rig. That's super important to me.
Yeah. And
then I've got an SHH shifter that's hopefully coming any day now. I don't know, because I don't have a shifter. Because when I got the DD1 a couple months ago, and since then I haven't had a shifter. So I'm really excited about getting to do some heel towing again.
Yeah, I'm sure. Good for you. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to give you a little break here. I will answer the first question and then allow you to respond. So, right. Expectations of Project Cars 3. We're recording this one day removed from me posting a video about exactly this, so this could be redundant for some people watching my channel. But yesterday we also saw a live stream from Jimmy Broadbent, and he was hypercritical of Project Cars 3. The stream did not go well. He just couldn't find sort of his zone with that game. And it's just hate throughout the internet right now for Project Cars 3. It doesn't look like it's going to be good. My own expectations, what I'm really hoping for, because we're going to get it. I pre-ordered it, so I should have it in my collection in the next few days. I think if you pre-ordered, you got it 3 days in advance of the 28th or something like that. So I'm really hoping. I've abandoned all hope for it being a true sim, but I'm really hoping that there's some sort of fun to be had in growing the career mode, because I know you can unlock cars and unlock liveries and upgrades and stuff like that. And I think there could be something to that, because I grew up playing a lot of Gran Turismo. In fact, I've played every Gran Turismo. And I remember being a kid and staying up late and just grinding the same race over and over and over so I could buy the next coolest car. And there was something really engaging to that. It kind of becomes a role-playing game at that point or something, right? Like it's that added dimension. You don't just boot into the game like we see in most racing sims. You don't just boot into the game and have access to everything right away and then just have to sort of spin a mental wheel to decide what you're going to drive. I like the idea of, you start off in road E or whatever the first class is in PC3 and then kind of progress your way through it. So that's my expectation, is that could be fun, but as a pure sim, I don't think it's going to be anything really. How about yourself?
Well, I don't think we need another pure sim, right? And we've got Race Room and Assetto Corsa Competizione and iRacing. I think them trying to compete on that front would be a waste of time. And plus, all of the damage that's been dealt with Project Cars 2, they don't need to go after, being a real sim. What I want from Project Cars 3 is for it to be fun. And that can mean so many different things, right? The fact that pit stops are gone, they don't really matter to me. And like you mentioned in your video, how many people really race with pit stops? And we have so much fun racing Project Cars 2 online with the group of guys that I race with. And we do shorter races usually. And that's all that matters to me is I have a good time in it. And can I complain about how the curbs feel in Project Cars 2? Absolutely. But it doesn't stop us from having so much fun. And honestly, the BMW 2002 Stance Works, we raced those maybe 2 weeks ago. I don't know if I've had much more fun in any car in sim racing than I had driving that in Project Cars 2. It's fantastic. So I just want Project Cars 3 to be fun. And my biggest question surrounding it is what will it bring that Project Cars 2 doesn't on that front? As far as doing a 20-minute race with a group of guys online, is what will Project Cars 3 be that Project Cars 2 doesn't already do? So will the force feedback be better? Will the physics be a little bit better? We'll see. And if it can do those things and elevate that a little bit, then sure, yeah, I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we're basically coming at it from the same perspective.
I think so.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, I've been giving this a lot of thought and I haven't fully formed an answer yet, but I was thinking about content in titles. So you have sort of at the extreme ends of things, you have on the lower end of the content scale, you have like the F1 titles or ACC where it does one thing and it tries to do it as good as possible. And then you have something like a Forza or a Gran Turismo where it's just they include as many cars and tracks as they can and don't really worry too much about accuracy or differences between the cars. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on what is the sweet spot. Like, do you think either one of those has it right, or do you think somewhere in between those is the right answer? What do you think?
I think it's good that we have things like Project Cars 2 and 3 that's coming out that does so much as kind of a gateway to kind of introduce people to what sim racing is or can be, and just the joys of driving cars and tracks. And then with so much content in those project games that you get to kind of find out, well, what do I really like? If I love GT3 cars, then yeah, go spend a lot of time in ACC and you can go as deep as you want. I'm still learning about how deep ACC is.
Sure.
But if you're a more casual racer, it's great to have so many different things to play with, right? And like F1 2020, I think does something that AMS2 with its Formula Ultimate doesn't do, and that Race Room with the FRX doesn't do, and that's celebrate what Formula One's all about with the 3 qualifying sessions and just the whole like the feel of the race weekends and getting to develop your car the way you want to and speccing out the different technology research areas. There's a place for that, and none of the other sims that do F1 come anywhere close to giving you that experience. So I've really enjoyed F1 2020 from that point of view. So it's just great to give everyone options. I don't want one sim. I don't want just iRacing. I like having all these different things to play with because they do feel so unique, and it's just fun having the variety.
Right. Yeah. I hear you. I think the sweet spot for me probably is R Factor 2. And the reason I say that is because they do have their little one-off cars that they release every once in a while. But I think they also do a good job of filling out fields. So we have, I think, roughly 10 GT3 cars right now. And then they brought the Endurance Pack, which had an LMP2 car, LMP3 car, and a few GTE cars. And so they're starting to fill out series. And we see that with ACC as well, right? They added the GT4 cars. And I like the idea of using the title as sort of a platform for distributing various series. And because I think if you do one thing, and I agree with you. I think you're right. I think there is something to, specializing in one thing, kind of drilling down and having it as almost like a bottomless pit of detail, like Assetto Corsa Competizione is like you say, you can go as deep as you want with those GT3 cars. But I also like the idea of some variability. What I don't like is at the extreme end, the Forzas, where it's like, do we really need 9 varieties of the R33 Skyline? It's like probably not. So they're just
Gran Turismo was always the worst about that. These obscure cars that.
Yeah, exactly. Like the next Skyline Black Edition. It's like, well, it's the exact same. You just painted it black. But Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of for me where the sweet spot is. I like the idea of a few race series, but what I'm not a fan of really, and I kind of alluded to this in when I was talking about the content in Project Cars 3, is I don't like when one car gets added just kind of randomly, just for the sake of, because something like, I'm trying to think of an example, but you might pick an obscure car, like let's say the 330 P4, the Ferrari 330 P4, beautiful car by all means, a classic piece of automotive design, but it's like, who's driving it? It doesn't have anything to race against necessarily if you just put in that car, and so it's like, is this a cruising sim? Like I just don't understand sometimes why they kind of throw those things in. Seems like, especially in the case of Slightly Mad, it's like, focus, guys. Like, don't worry about adding that.
That's the question, right? It's like, what did that cost us? What did we not get because you threw in this one car that maybe someone at Slightly Mad just had to have it, right? Maybe that's their thing. Maybe one of the game devs is like, nope, this one's going in.
Yeah.
But that's a good question. We've got so much content like Project Cars does that. Yeah, something's got to suffer, right?
Yeah.
They could have done something with those time and resources, but
yeah, exactly. Okay, what is your highlight so far of having a sim racing channel? What's been the best moment so far? And I know you do a lot of live streams, so you have sort of more randomness and things that can happen. Maybe it was a special overtake, or maybe you got a win in a race you thought you wouldn't win, or what's been the highlight so far? What's been the best moment?
The best thing about the channel, honestly, is the community, because I grew up, loving cars, loving racing and sim racing, but for me, it was always something I did by myself because I never had any friends, local friends, here with me that liked racing and sim racing the way I do. And so being able to join various people's discords and growing my channel and growing my discord, that's absolutely been the best part, is being able to talk about the race we just did with the 10 guys that were racing it and stuff. It's the community aspect of it that I'm loving, because I finally get to share this thing that I've loved so much my whole life with other people.
And that's exactly why we're here talking right now, because it's funny, like sim racing is so much a part of my life, and my wife is nice and she listens to my stories about I'm doing this and this, but she has no clue. She's not a sim racer, right? But so I spend a bunch of time here and create and have cool interactions, but then I go out into the world and nobody I know is a sim racer, so it's not like I can get together with my friends and talk sim racing, right? If I get together with my friends, we talk NFL. And so that's sort of the reason I wanted to create this exact video series, was to talk to people like you who, we share a mutual interest and can have interesting conversation. I'm gonna duck my own question here. I don't think I have a single moment where it was my favorite moment. I was proud of myself for and it's laughably slow now, but I remember the first time I put the Zonda R around Nordschleife faster than the real world record, and that was a moment for me because I chased it for so long. When I started out, like, I couldn't break 7 minutes, okay? And that was when I was new to Assetto Corsa. And again, this is laughably slow now. Like, there's guys in the 623 range, I think. But I worked and worked and worked at it and tweaked setups, and I worked and finally broke the 7 minutes, and I was proud of myself. And the time just kept falling, and I was learning the course, and then finally got it down to, I think I did a 647.2, and literally I crashed coming across the finish line. Like, I was so nervous to cross the finish line, because it's one of those things, you're watching your lap delta and you're like, I'm gonna do it. You're right on edge, and the final corner at Nordschleife, I took it too wide and put a tire onto the grass and spun across the finish line, but I got my 647.2, and I was so proud of myself. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's since fallen into the low 630s, but back then it was a big deal for me, so maybe that's the highlight so far. But
hot lapping in general has been pretty good. I've done a couple hot lapping competitions with people on Discords and stuff, and it's so fun to try to beat your friends. That's probably the best, when you're coming around that last corner and you see you've got the 0.2 or 3 in the green, and you're like, yes, like, oh my god, that's pretty fun.
Yeah, for sure. So, of all the real world experiences you've had, what's been the coolest so far?
Oh man. The Coda one was pretty special because we were among the first amateurs to get to go do that. But But so I've also driven Road Atlanta in addition to Dakota and Laguna Seca,
Yeah.
and that was really special because that was a 3-day race course with Skip Barber.
Right.
And to get to, and we were racing with or driving with, drivers from ALMS at the time, the American Le Mans Series and stuff. So I don't know if you know who Brian Sellers is if you watch
No.
real racing. Okay, but he raced for the Falcon Tires 911 in that series, and he was, my instructor. And it's like, this is so cool. I mean, it'd be like getting to go, play football with, fill in your quarterback from your favorite team or
Right.
whatever kind of
Right.
thing. So that was really special to get to spend 3 days with, true professionals working on driving. That was pretty cool.
I'm sure.
And one of those days was in the rain, and boy, I can tell you, Road Atlanta in the rain is pretty scary.
Yeah. And it's
That was pretty
interesting
cool.
when I was watching your video on Coda, and they had that caveat in the contract that if you cause damage to the track, I can't remember what you said, it was $500 a foot or something to repair it. And boy,
Yeah.
that's got to put anxiety in the back of your mind. Like, you want to just focus on the fun of the experience, but then you're thinking, okay, please, muffler, stay
Yeah.
on.
I found someone who sold event insurance, and it was only like, I don't know, $60 or something, and it supposedly had up to like $250,000 of coverage.
Okay.
I don't know if it would have worked or not, but I was like, that is cheap peace of mind. Let's do it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, for sure.
that at
for
least,
sure.
and but thankfully, no incidents there. Kept it
Yeah,
clean.
yeah. I had a similar thing. Like my own real world, my own best experience real world was driving a Nissan GTR at a track day event. I guess it was 2 years ago now. And that was, it became kind of my birthday present for 2 years running. The first one was I got to drive a Ferrari 430. And then the following year was the GTR, and I loved the GTR way more than the Ferrari. The Ferrari was amazing, and you had this V8 just roaring behind you. It was incredible, but it always felt like you were driving the Ferrari. It always felt like you were driving a chandelier or something. You're just so concerned about not breaking it that you can't really enjoy yourself full on. Whereas the Nissan, like when you're seated in the cockpit of a GTR, it just feels like you're in a regular passenger car. It happens to have 500 horsepower, but in the cockpit, you can't really tell that. Like, it looks so pedestrian, and so you're not afraid to just hammer it, right? Like, again, with the Ferrari, you're so concerned, like, oh, what if I spin out? Like, just contacting a concrete barrier, taking off the front bumper. You don't want to even think about what that's going to cost, right? But the GTR, I mean, it just kind of, it was just fun to just hammer that thing. And
Hammer's a good word for that. I've ridden in a GTR as a passenger at my local track, and I've also ridden in a 996 GT3. And the GT3 was like riding around on a cloud at incredible speeds, but it was just so precise and smooth and fantastic. The GTR was like a hammer. I mean, it was just brutal with its power and its grip and everything, and the brakes. Completely different ways to go super fast around a racetrack.
Sure.
But yeah, the GTR is like an explosion.
It really is, yeah. And there's so much tech behind it too, keeping the grip at its maximum point at all times. So it really does a lot of the driving for you, which is good for a guy like me. Just a couple more to go here. Best racing sim for beginners, and I'll lead on this one. I think probably if I was. If you're just dipping your toes into the world of sim racing, it's going to be an unpopular answer, but I think I might go Project Cars 2 because it covers so many bases. The online is simple to use. It's got good, wheel support. I think I would probably go PC2, and I assume once PC3 comes up, PC2 can be had for, pennies on the dollar of what we paid when it first came out. So it's probably a good all-around sim, and then I guess as you grow and become more picky in what you look for in a sim, you could go on to other things, but that probably covers so many bases in one sim. I'd probably go PC2. How about yourself?
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. I know people complain about Project Cars 2 from force feedback and physics sides. I think we've fixed force feedback with some of these aftermarket force feedback files personally.
Yeah.
I really enjoy the force feedback now. That's not a problem for me.
Yeah.
And I think the physics in Project Cars 2 are good enough in that the car does what I think it should. Based on my real world driving experience and driving other sims, that the cars generally behave the way I think they should. And maybe they're more forgiving, certainly, than like iRacing. So I think that's a pretty good one to start with. Driving GT4 and ACC might be a pleasant thing too. I think,
True.
because those cars are pretty nice.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'd probably tell people to avoid the GT3s initially if you're
Yes,
just starting
absolutely.
out because they're great in so many ways, but once that back end starts to go, it can be a real fight to keep yourself going. So I think you'd probably beat your head against the wall.
Yeah.
But that actually wraps it up. That was my last question, but I want to just thank you so much, Alan, for joining me. This was such a great chat. And one more time, tell us a little bit about the charity stream you got coming up.
Yeah. So I need to nail down the date. I'm shooting for September 19th, and the charity I'm benefiting is Alex's Lemonade Stand, which focuses on pediatric cancer research. And my goal is probably to do a 12-hour event, and I'm probably going to do some community races at the start of the stream and at the end. So many of the people that I race with are scattered throughout the world, which is an awesome thing about sim racing, right? So we've got guys from Australia, New Zealand, Finland, Sweden, England, Germany, Poland that I race with. It's really cool to have such a diverse community. So I'm probably going to do races at the start and races at the end to get as many of those guys, to be able to come on, and hopefully you if you're available.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to do some just other things along the way. We might do some keyboard only races at some point.
Oh, no way.
Maybe some Rocket League, and I think Fall Guys is a new game that everyone's really excited about. And we're going to play some stuff with my son on the stream too. And we're just going to have some fun and hopefully raise some money for the charity.
Excellent. All right. So the channel is MoonieGT. I'll drop links in the description. Thank you again, Alan, for joining me. And
Thank you so much for having me.
yeah, we'll see everyone next time.
All right.